Palantir, the stock's up 333% so far in 2024. Leader out of the S&P 500 names. Let's bring in George Tsilis, senior markets contributor here on the network. George, Palantir, we talk about this one every once in a while, but it's had a spectacular year. It's getting added to the NASDAQ 100 now after getting added to the S&P 500 before. But is valuation getting a little steep here, George?
Well, that's a good question, Tom. If you go back and look, then when we looked at this last, I still had some notes written down, and valuation, a couple months ago, it was very steep, but it keeps climbing price-wise. So this is just an example of it. Doesn't matter, where I think valuation is, or even, those who are value investors think the market is dictating the price, and the price has been moving higher. Now, if you look at the last couple of days, there's been some intermittent weakness in Palantir, but nonetheless, if you look at some of the aspects of the business, their customer base is becoming more diverse. They're starting to deploy more of their foundry technologies, which is all based on decision analytics and artificial intelligence in the private sector across multiple industry groups, everything from oil and gas, mining, industrials, automotive, aviation. But the DoD contracts, Department of Defense contracts, which is still about half of its revenue base, has been also growing. So there's been business growth, and I think that, again, matches some of the price action. But if you do look at, the elements of price action relative to those numbers, just to give you some context here, the earnings estimates that the company is expected to earn on an adjusted basis for the full year of 2024, which is going to be ending in the next couple of weeks or so, is about 38 cents per share. So it's right now trading at 200 times this year's earnings and next year's earnings, around 160 times. Sales in the last 4 quarters for Palantir, cumulative sales were around 2.6 billion and change. So right now it's trading around 67 times sales. So you have to ask yourself, is that expensive? One would say, if Palantir was operating in a vacuum, unencumbered or uninfluenced by outside forces, perhaps, favorable government contracts or anything else, yeah, it's expensive. But, it's still been moving higher. And of course, shorts also have been really squeezed. In fact, I looked at the short interest now, it's around 3.5% of the float. So as the stock price has been moving higher, shorts have been covering. But at some point in time, if the shorts continue to cover, there may not necessarily be many more shorts that need to cover. So then you have to say who's going to be buying the stock at that point in time.
George, when this company started, Enterprise Resource Management, I had to look up all these acronyms for what they do. And what's cool about them and why they have a niche is that they collect the data and help with decision making. Right, is what they do. And the dig on them was always that it wasn't scalable. It was going to be government. Their artificial intelligence platform was just going to be government, and it wouldn't go. Turns out it's scalable, and they can do it to medium and small businesses, and they're starting to change their business to give them in small and medium companies. They got AIP boot camps to help smaller businesses take in their thing. And that's why I think this stock is starting to go crazy, because what everyone thought it wasn't scalable, turns out it is, George.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like I said, if you look at their customer base, it's very diverse and becoming more diverse every day, not just in the large, multinational firms. We're talking about small and medium-sized businesses. At the end of the day, they do have the Department of Defense revenue, which also is growing, by the way, and that's pretty substantive. And effectively, Palantir basically, makes prices, and the government pays what they offer the marketplace. So, with that said, they're scalable in the private sector. The private sector obviously finds value in their underlying technology and product. And that's where you're seeing most of the growth lie for Palantir. And, previously you would look at their business and say, yeah, well, the government's not necessarily considering price on a scalable basis. They'll just pay whatever because the government is not for profit. But for-profit enterprises matter, and they care about how much they spend. And apparently there's a value proposition for Palantir's products. And that's the justification for the for the price move. But at the same time, you have to weigh that and, of course, the momentum the stock has relative to valuations, which, again, are rich, but it doesn't necessarily mean the stock can't keep going higher from here.
Yep, the growth rate last quarter, commercial side of their business grew 77% year over year last quarter. Revenue soared nearly 55%. So it is growing, but I think it needs to keep those growth rates going at this point to kind of equate to this valuation. All right, great stuff. Thanks to George Tsilis, Senior Markets Correspondent here, breaking down Palantir.